My sympathies to all those who were rooting for Notre Dame yesterday. But speaking of football, those of you who watch a lot of it will no doubt remember that it wasn't that many years ago that it was very common for people to hold up signs on the sign, John 3:16. They were expressing their Christian faith, expressing one of the lines from St. John's Gospel, the 3rd chapter, the 16th verse, that expresses a central teaching of Christianity. God so loved the world that God gave God's only Son, so that whoever believes in him will have eternal life. But I mention that because we heard again from John this morning, this time from his first epistle. And there's a line in that which strikes me as being just as important as John 3:16, although perhaps confusing at first, perhaps even a bit disturbing at first. It's 1 John chapter 3, verse 2. And I'll remind you in a moment what it said, but I would like to introduce why I find it very possibly confusing for us by inviting you to think back all the way to the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, the story we're all familiar with, the story of the fall, of the original sin. You know that God says to Adam and Eve, I've given you all of this beauty, all of this wonder in this world, but there is one tree that's dangerous. You shouldn't take from it. It'll kill you. That, of course, then allows the serpent, the tempter, to say to them, oh no, God is doing this for God's own purposes. God really doesn't want you to take from that tree because, and see how many of us may remember what the serpent says. The serpent says, because God knows that if you eat from this tree, your eyes will be opened and you will become like God. Thank you. Yes, very good. That is the original sin. Wanting to become like God, wanting to have the power and the strength and the glory of the divinity. And it is that original sin that has led to all of the hatred, all of the violence, all of the wars, all of the oppression, all of the abuse, indeed the very thing that is continuing to trouble our church at the moment is clergy thinking themselves to be like God and being able to have control over young people or control over the knowledge of that in so many different ways. That sin has remained with humanity, and we are constantly being warned against wanting to be like God. So why do I say then that this line in St. John's epistle is confusing? Because he seems, at first, to contradict Genesis. Do you remember what he said? We are God's children now. We don't even know what we will become, but we do know this. When it is all revealed, we will become like God. Well, I thought we weren't supposed to want to be like God. I thought that was the very sin that we're supposed to turn away from. Why is John now promising us that that's the goal for us, to become like God? Well, he clarifies it at the very end of that sentence. He says, we will become like him when we see him as he is. In other words, when we come truly to understand who God is, we will know what it means to be like God, and that it doesn't mean looking for all the power and the strength and the superiority over others. For that false understanding is what has led to all of those problems. Every one of us being tempted still to say, oh, I'm better than everybody else. I've got more intelligence than the people around me. I've got more money than the people around me. I've got more influence than the people around me. Everybody should listen to me. Everybody should kowtow to me. Everybody should do what I want them to do. And we go beyond individuals. My race is better than all of the others. My country is better than all of the others. My church is better than all of the others. In all sorts of different ways, we fall to that temptation of wanting to make ourselves like God. And that temptation, more and more, as humanity and as we as individuals give into it, eats away at us and begins to destroy us. But the promise that is given to us is, again, yes, we will become like God. But what is the distinction that John makes? Throughout that whole first letter, this would be my second question to you this morning, John continues to define who God is with a single word. Throughout that letter, John says, God is... No? God is love.
Love.
Over and over, God is love. And the one who knows love and lives in love knows and lives in God. And it is when the love of God is able to touch us and embrace us and empower us, that then the power and the strength and the glory take on their meaning for us. God is love. We believe God to be Trinity, that the very essence of the one God is a relationship. We believe God's love to have extended itself so deeply to us, as in John 3:16, that God sent the Word to become one of us. We believe that God's presence among us is found in the reality of love, so that, as we celebrate today on Holy Family Sunday, we believe that the love of husband and wife becomes the love of Christ, that they become Christ's presence for one another, that their love then becomes life-giving in a very particular way through their children, but all of us who are called to love are called to be life-givers in one way or another in all of our relationships, offering and giving life. When power is by itself, it means control and dominance over other people and is destructive. When it is connected to love, it means finding the strength to do good, finding the strength to be for others, finding the strength to allow the love to grow within us. When strength is by itself, it means controlling other people, it means looking down on other people, it means exalting ourselves. When it is connected to love, it becomes the courage that empowers us to right wrongs, to reach out to those who are in need. When glory is by itself, it means self-aggrandizement. It means simply trying to make myself look better than everybody else, and even refusing to see my own failures and faults. When it is connected to love, it becomes a healthy self-appreciation that is joined to an appreciation for others, that we all share the glory of God together. So John's words to us today, I think, are amazing. Could be confusing, but not when we think them through. We are indeed called to become like God. Not in some sense of superiority over others, but in a sense of being able to offer deeper and richer love. Until that day comes, when, as John says, it is all revealed, when we will see Jesus as he is, when we will know God as God is, and therefore be living in this new world of love that will last forever.